call him a friend. I am also, happy, as we all are, to have been exposed to his brilliant mind. I think especially here in Vancouver, we are all very trauma-informed because of the work that Gabor has done over his lifetime. And I really, especially want to thank Anne-Marie Armour again. Is Anne-Marie still in here? She's stepped out. Anne-Marie, you're awesome. She's in the back again, but her title is volunteer coordinator, but she's basically the operations manager of MAPS Canada. Sometimes it seems she does a lot of work and did a lot of work for this. And I want to thank Mike Oliver and the UBC Psychedelic Society, who have offered this space to us for free tonight as well, which is going to make it a much more profitable fundraiser than it would have been otherwise. The opinions expressed in this presentation are mine and not that of MAPS or MAPS Canada. I do serve on the board of directors of MAPS Canada. That's a volunteer position. There are 2 paid employees for MAPS Canada. That's Mark and Anne-Marie. Our visions do align in a lot of ways, mine and MAPS, but please don't take anything that I say as gospel from MAPS itself. So today, our trip, get it? Psychedelic trip? Yeah, is just going to take you through the story of Iboga and how I started working with it, which is very directly tied to Vancouver. I'm going to speak about Iboga and Ibogaine in their traditional and Western contexts, and speak about the formation of my company, Liberty Root, and speak about the downtown east side of Vancouver here and how that relates to Iboga, because that's how Iboga came on my radar. And I'll introduce a very good friend of mine as well, and then speak about some things that we can look forward to ahead for this psychedelic community here in Vancouver. Iboga came on my radar in a very roundabout way. It really started in 2001, September 11th, 2001, 9/11, that fateful day. Before 9/11, I did what I did, which was wake up in the morning, turn on the CTV News Network, let that play in the background while I got ready. This was pre-internet news, so my news was consumed also through 3 newspapers a day, and I would get so righteously pissed off at everything I read in the news, but I didn't do anything about it. Then September 11th happened. That fateful morning I did the exact same thing, turned on the TV, watched those towers fall, called my girlfriend up here at UBC and said the world has changed forever, and sure enough, the world did change forever. A couple of months after 9/11, though, I realized, I call it through an act of grace, just it dawned on me, Trevor, you're driving yourself crazy with all of this media that I was exposed to that got a lot crazier after 9/11. So I realized that the media had turned me into, and I feel like the media does an even better job at this these days, it turned me into a passive yet obsessive observer of all the things that were wrong in the world. I would get super pissed off, but I wouldn't do anything about it. So I decided a couple months after September 11th that I was going to go on a media fast. I turned off the news. I stopped reading those newspapers. I did that for about 3 years straight. At the same time, I was reading a lot of books on success and how to be happy and how to get what you want out of life. And it seemed to me that the happiest people, or at least the people that I felt that I most wanted to emulate, seemed to be helping a heck of a lot more people than I was at the time. So not only did I turn off the media, so rightly, wrongly, naively for sure, innocently, but with an honest will to want to try and help, I just started going into the downtown east side of Vancouver. For those of you that don't know what the downtown east side is, maybe perhaps people on live stream, the downtown east side has been called, rightfully, the poorest postal code in Canada. In the latest census, that was the case again. Within about 6 square blocks, there is abject poverty to a degree that you rarely witness in the world. And my new town of Vancouver, I've always had a kind of a compassion for people who are addicted to drugs. I think that's mostly because of, I realized the slippery slope, and I could have gone down that slope very, very easily. So I just started looking at different ways that I might help that neighborhood. That started out with volunteering at the Carnegie Center for a little while, just showing up, starting to get to know the residents, and this essentially turned into a 10-year-long research project. In 2005, I actually started a company. I printed up t-shirts. I was going to use the profits of those t-shirts that I sold to try and help the downtown east side, but I realized very quickly that I didn't know what I was going to do with the money anyway. So I really just started putting boots to the ground again, and I ran into VANDU, the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users. I established a relationship with some people at VANDU, started speaking to their membership, basically touching base, saying, look, you know, do you even want was the founder of VANDU. I spoke with her for a few hours and just, again, said, trying to find ways to help out the neighborhood. She was very gracious in receiving me. She said it's cool to meet somebody who put out fires. And through that conversation, we weren't able to come up with too much that I might be able to help with. But the whole time I was speaking to Anne, there was this folder on the wall behind her. That was the exact folder there. And it said Ibogaine on it. And I said, what about Ibogaine? And she goes, actually, I have people calling me for that all the time. And I said, I'm aware of Ibogaine. Maybe I'll follow that thread. I had, you know, access and experience with psychedelics very early in life. 14 years old was the first time I had LSD. I didn't know about their therapeutic potential back then, but I do remember saying to my friends at the time in one particular experience that this is what adults are forgetting that has made the world so screwed up. And then later in life, I lived with, I was the roommate of a woman who co-owned the original urban shaman here in Vancouver. So I was familiar with the plant medicine world. I had heard of Iboga before. I had just never put two and two together that that might be a way to help the neighborhood. So let me tell you a bit about Iboga. This is the plant itself, Tabernanthe iboga. It's a shrub that grows in West Africa. Gabon and Cameroon is where it is most prevalent. And the story behind the discovery of the psychoactive effects of this plant are that a porcupine was eating a plant, a hunter killed the porcupine was hooked up, and they went on a wonderful journey. It's a 36-hour-long psychedelic trip when you take Iboga. From there, I went to the chief of the village and said, something's up here. They realized what was happening. The root of this plant. That's when properties were discovered. The Bwiti tradition grew out of this, and this is a spiritual tradition, again, focused mainly in Gabon and Cameroon. I have not been to Gabon myself. I was supposed to go last summer, but that fell through for me, unfortunately. I do have a lot of connections to Africa now, this part of Africa, through some people who have been trained in this African shamanic way of working with this medicine. So I do expect to go there one day, so hopefully I can do a presentation that gives you a bit more information on that traditional use of the medicine one day. But the Western use of Iboga started in 1962 when somebody who was addicted to heroin, this gentleman here, Howard Lotsoff, his chemist buddy knew that he was open to trying different things. So he said, here, why don't you try this Ibogaine stuff? And he did. And it sent him on this powerful 36-hour-long psychedelic journey. And he came out the other end and he said, wait a second, I haven't wanted heroin the whole time I've been on this, nor do I want it now. So that's when its anti-addictive properties were discovered. And thankfully, Howard was a very industrious guy. He started knocking on doors. He tried to get people's attention about what he felt at the time that he discovered effectively a cure for addiction. He kept at it. He formed the Global Ibogaine Therapy Alliance. This is the standards of care that they have come out with most recently. That's actually my mug on the cover there. I was a model when they were shooting some stock footage at my treatment center. But that is, that's essentially how Ibogaine came on the radar as an anti-addictive medicine. It has been used across the world in different capacities in this anti-addictive capacity. It works very, very well for opiate addiction when nothing else does. It does work very well for other addictions as well, but the people that called me most often were people who were looking to overcome opiate addiction because it can help you do that without those painful withdrawals. So these are a few different versions of the medicine. This is the plant itself. This is the root bark here. If you went to Africa to get initiated, you would consume that second layer of root bark itself. The brown powder up there, that's Iboga total alkaloid, TA. So you can refine the root bark one time and you're left with this brown powder that contains all of those alkaloids. And then you can take that brown powder, refine it one more time using a hydrochloric acid solution, and from there you're left with the white powder, which is Ibogaine, that one particular molecule, which is very effective for treating addiction, but at Liberty Root we would also use that total alkaloid as well. That shrub down there is a plant called Voconga africana, and it contains something called vocongamine, which you can then turn into Ibogaine. So there are sustainability issues with Iboga, which are very important to consider. One of the ways around that is to get your medicine from this not threatened plant, Voconga africana. The current legal status in the United States, it's been illegal since the early 70s, kind of when they threw all the psychedelics onto the list of things that we're going to outlaw. Iboga got stuck there. In Canada here, it was listed as a natural health product for basically the last 4 or 5 years that I was working with it. A natural health product is something that should be available over the counter and shouldn't be potentially dangerous. So it wasn't a good spot for it. Health Canada looked at different avenues, different ways to schedule this medicine. They could have outlawed it. Thankfully, they didn't. What they decided to do was put it on the prescription drug list, and that's a good spot for it. Unfortunately, with it on the prescription drug list, that doesn't mean it's immediately available as a prescription. It still needs to go through phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials to hopefully one day be made. It's a prescription. That's one of the reasons I'm very happy to be associated with that, is Rick Doblin is looking forward to doing a phase 1/phase 2 safety study out of California that would be FDA approved to start this process for Ibogaine. I know there are people watching or listening, I hope there are, that $2 million isn't that much money for them. We need $2 million to get this study started, so if somebody would like to donate that at this fundraiser, that would be awesome. We'll let you into the VIP event after that. Health Canada also has something called the Special Access Drug Program, and that's to make medicines available that wouldn't typically be available for people who are, number one, in life or death situations, and they've tried everything else in order to overcome their ailment. Arguably, everybody in Canada today that has an opioid addiction that is using street drugs is in that life or death situation, and nobody's calling the Ibogaine guy because they haven't tried everything else. So we are working towards getting that permission through the Special Access Drug Program. I've been saying that for a little while now. We keep coming upon other hurdles to overcome, but we've got a great team in place right now, and a new venture that is underway that is kind of taking Liberty Root and combining it with another business and some other players and expanding it. So we do hope to make Ibogaine available here in BC again fairly soon. The formation of Liberty Root, that first conversation with Ann Livingston happened in 2009. I gave Ibogaine to a couple of people immediately thereafter and saw that was a horrible mistake. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't think I learned that lesson quite quick enough, but thankfully nobody got hurt. in 2013 because Ibogaine is potentially dangerous. Ibogaine has cardiotoxicity issues, so it's not the one that you want to try on your own. You want to work with somebody who does know what they're doing with regard to this medicine. In 2013, I was invited to the Global Ibogaine Therapy Alliance conference that was here in Vancouver. I met a lot of people who did know what they were doing with this medicine, including the gentleman who became my business partner, Gareth Moxie, and we formed Liberty Root. We opened a center we rented a 3-bedroom townhome in White Rock. We wanted to get out of the downtown core, and we used the master bedroom as the treatment room. We treated about 75 people through there in a couple of years, and once we got set up, all the stars aligned, all the doors started opening. Thankfully, we met Gabor Mate early on. He was a big supporter of ours from the beginning and introduced us to the woman who became the physician that we worked with. She would prescribe things that we needed. We had a great assortment of registered nurses who would work with us as well. And our process is we would bring people in. It started with 7-day treatments. We realized quickly that we needed something longer. So we would bring people in for 10 days at a time, and with the doctor working with us, she was able to prescribe opiates so that we didn't have to rush into the treatment, nor would people go into withdrawal. So we would keep them on oral morphine for a day or so. That would lead into the Ibogaine treatment, that 36-hour-long flood dose it's called, after which the withdrawals are gone, the cravings are gone. A person will get a decent night's sleep, and we'll do some booster doses out the other end, but really the second half of that 10 days is really just a person putting themselves back together, integrating, and getting ready to face the world. Part of our application process is making sure that there is a really good aftercare strategy in place as well. And that's the flood dose protocol. I think it's important that people know there's also low dose protocols that can be done with Ibogaine. You can, for example, bring somebody in once a week, give them a bit of medicine. That'll take away their withdrawals for a day, for example. Maybe they're on longer acting opiate like Cadian. Then you can cut that opiate in half once those withdrawals come back. Keep them on that new level, bring them in another day. So rather than bringing in people for an invasive 10-day treatment, you can do other things with lower doses of medicine, and I think that's really important that people know about that. So as the story started, this all grew out of me wanting to see what I could do to try and help this neighborhood called the Downtown East Side. And once we had started Liberty Root and we were showing a bit of profit, I went back to Vandu and started meeting with the membership at the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users. Essentially, they hold harm reduction meetings where they will pay a small stipend for people to come and attend their meetings. It would be a $3 to $5 stipend to sit in and listen to information that might make you safer as you're using these substances that are prohibited. And I introduced the opportunity, if anybody wanted to come and try Ibogaine, maybe to overcome their addiction, we're going to make that available. I knew that we didn't just want to kind of pluck somebody out of that environment, give them medicine, and drop them back in, though. So what I said is what we would do is meet for about 90 days. I asked people to come in once a week for about 90 days leading up to the treatment. We had about 15 people at that first meeting, then about 4 or 5 people showing up consistently week after week. And at the end of that 90 days, I really had one man left standing who kind of jumped through all the hoops that I asked him to, and with all the stars aligned for him to come in and work with us. So we brought this gentleman in for 7 days. The treatment went really well. Unfortunately, the housing arrangement that he had set up fell apart shortly after leaving us. He did end up in a shelter again. He did end up relapsing. But Aaron stayed in touch with us. He kept working on himself. He was never the same after that initial Ibogaine experience. We did bring him in for another treatment. The story continues. He's turned into a really great friend and a real inspiration because he's got a beautiful apartment that he likes. He's got a job that he loves. And Aaron was also very open to kind of, one issue might be the fact that you're hooked on a substance. The issue in an area like the Downtown East Side is just poverty in general. And Aaron was open to information, books that I read, fed him, just trying to change his mindset so that he might have a bit more hope moving forward in life. So a really cool thing happened in that regard. It was about a year ago, actually. I got a call from Aaron saying, Trev, I've got $5,000 saved up, and he was looking for investment advice. So it's been a real success story working with Aaron, and I thought, what a great opportunity to introduce you to my really good friend at an event like this. So let's bring this guy up here, Aaron Boney, ladies and gentlemen.
Chase down a porcupine to meet you, Trevor. So anyways, you know, when I got invited to do this, the speech, I was wondering, what should I say? I mean, what am I going to say? What should I share? And you know what? It just came to me. I'm going to just share what kind of shape Trevor found me. Like, I was living in the downtown east side, shelter to shelter, SRO to SRO. I'd been strung out on methadone and cocaine for many years. Like, I was mentally insane. I was physically worn out completely. I was, you know, thriving on just on scarcity. I mean, that was my story: fear and scarcity. And I mean, for me, I was on like I said, a methadone for a number of years. And I mean, that just masks the solution. That drug wore me out. Oh, I'm sorry. That drug actually wore me out physically and mentally and actually spiritually. I mean, I was disconnected from myself, from life, from well, just from society. And then I met this girl in the downtown east side, and she actually done some work with Dr. Mate, and she had told me about this opportunity that Trevor and Gareth were going to be coming down to the downtown east side and offering some free treatment. And so, you know, I jumped on that. The first opportunity I had, I took advantage of that because, like I said, the only thing really available was methadone or 12-step program, and both of those have some serious flaws in my opinion. But anyways. Like I said, when I first met Trevor, we spent 90 days seeing him once a week, and finally, after jumping through all the hoops and getting off the methadone and getting onto audits in order that I could do this treatment, then came the fateful day, right? And you know, like, I don't know if when Trevor first started doing it, he was doing these flood doses. And so, unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to go through a spiritual journey. I kind of had a blackout, and but and after that, I was so physically worn out from doing methadone for so many years, from living in shelters, from just, you know, just living to use and using to live, that I mean, I was laid up on that bed for a week. It took a lot for me to get up. But once I got up, I found myself this black hole that I used to carry around, this empty, this need was filled. And I was able to start focusing on healing. I started focusing on uncovering what it is that was keeping me addicted to drugs. And Trevor was a huge help with that. I mean, not only was he providing the Ibogaine treatment, he cared, and we went through a process of learning how to look at myself and how to see myself and realize what it is that I needed to do to heal myself. And like Trevor had said, my story involves relapse, but it also involves various other plant medicines. I went from Ibogaine to ayahuasca to 5-MeO, and eventually this led me to Vipassana meditation. And the one thing I found out about all these plant medicines opened up this huge doorway for me. It allowed me to kickstart my healing, but it also, I realized that strong mind-body connection that was involved in this whole process. I had so much stuck energy in my body, so much contractions. I was just racked with pain. And anyways, like I said, I went through various plant medicines and eventually led up to a Vipassana meditation, which focuses on the exact same thing, is that uncovering the energetic contractions within the body and doing healing through deep meditation. And anyways, I'm proud to say that I had gone through this program. I'm proud to have met Sir Trevor, and I'm so incredibly grateful for being given this opportunity to come here and speak. And I'm so grateful for everybody here who risked so much to bring these plant medicines out into public. A lot of people put a lot of them on the line, so I want to thank you.
Oh, he deserves that. Thank you. He's a different guy from when I met him, that's for sure. Your healing is very inspiring, brother. Thank you so much. So we would like to expand this program and do more in the downtown east side. And there's a lot of pieces coming together to make that happen in a very real way, including contact with a lot of medical professionals, a lot of social workers. Anne-Marie is an incredible gift. She's a social worker on the downtown east side and has a whole kind of team ready to go as soon as we're ready to launch something like this. So for a version 2.0, we expect to use the Special Access Drug Program, and the clientele I think that we would seek from the downtown east side would be kind of the type of person that would be in on-site. So on-site is above from Insight, the safe injection site, and the clientele there just have a bit more stability. They're maybe on methadone or Suboxone, maybe they'd like to overcome getting off, maybe they like to get off the replacement opiates. So Ibogaine or Iboga in low doses through a place like On-Site would be my dream. It would work really, really well. And then a version 3.0 of that project, I call it a community-based, incentivized, trauma-informed, full-spectrum healing protocol that can be duplicated. So we've got some really, really big plans in mind. This would have technology behind it as well. There's, like I said, a really cool team coming together in a lot of ways for a project that is launching here shortly. So speaking of which, I'm about to wrap up here, but looking ahead, I spoke to a doctor on the downtown east side recently. He mentioned that there is a new drug detox and withdrawal management facility that they're aiming to perhaps open at the corner of Clark and First Avenue. That's actually my neighborhood, so I'm going to speak in that regard as well. But I'm slated to go to City Hall on the 20th here. I'll be speaker number 25, and I'm just going to make sure Vancouver knows about Ibogaine. Just make sure it's on the radar. I'm giving you all those details there because I'm allowed 5 minutes to talk. I'm allowed 8 minutes to talk if I have more than 3 people there that I'm representing. So if anybody wants to show up and stand up, Anne-Marie will be there. Will give me 8 minutes to speak about Ibogaine. Another thing that's happening that's very exciting that I'm a part of is you may have seen a trailer for a movie called Microdose Me. That is a story of a woman who was addicted to opiates and started looking at different ways to overcome that addiction. Some filmmakers said, I heard that microdosing mushrooms might help, and that was kind of the start of her journey. That this movie features Gabor, it features Mark Hayden, it features Mark Howard from Iboga Soul. There are a lot of the local community that came together to make this project happen. The working title was Microdose Me. It's now called Dosed. I have seen 2 rough edits of this movie, and it's really phenomenal. It's going to make a huge impact. It's going to make our community look really great. So we're aiming to do a MAPS fundraiser / premiere of that movie here in Vancouver, hopefully at the Orpheum. We were really inspired by all those psychedelic people at the Orpheum the other night. So when I say stay tuned, just make sure you like that MAPS Canada Facebook page and we'll be able to keep you updated on things like this. Liberty Root, my company, it seems we are making moves to merge Liberty Root with another company, Iboga Soul, Iboga Ways, and we think a beautiful way of working with Ibogaine and Iboga would be to do a low-dose protocol to help somebody detox off the substance itself, and then take them into a psycho-spiritual experience with a weedy experience. That would just hit all bases. So we're working on putting together a company that's going to be able to provide that legitimately. We're looking at working legitimately with some other substances as well. And we're really looking at this project as a community project. We want all of the psychedelic community, especially here within Vancouver, to be able to plug into this and feel at home here. And I just put, if not us, who? I think this all the time. The world is an interesting place right now. There's a lot going on, especially if you pay attention to that media, which I've learned not to anymore. I even unsubscribe to all the news networks through my Facebook feed. Turn that crap off. But we're here in Vancouver. Vancouver is like a jewel of a city on earth. So I just look at all the opportunity that we've got, all of the resources that we've got, all of the incredible people that we've got, and I look at the problems of the world or the problems of our community, and I say, you know, if we in Vancouver can't figure this shit out, there's no hope for anybody else, because we've really got all of the advantages. And when I think about the psychedelic community, and there's been rumblings of kind of division within the psychedelic community for different reasons, again, I'm like, if we as the psychedelic community, the ones with all the medicines, can't get our shit together, then there's really no hope for anybody else. So I really feel like, we need to open our hearts and start working on a lot of these projects. Stay tuned, stay plugged in, and support MAPS Canada. We can moaning about the state of the world is a very common thing to do, but being able to actually put your money into something that will actually help the state of the world, that's very rare. Before I was directly associated with MAPS or MAPS Canada, I gave the biggest financial donation of my life to MAPS Canada because I see them doing solutions. They're doing things that are going to make the world a better place. And we've got a bunch of research projects that are underway right now. We're wrapping up the MDMA study, which is financed, but there are I've got a laundry list of studies that we could do. There's a never-ending list of studies we could do if we had the funding for it. So, put your money where it's going to help. MAPS Canada is a great way to place that money. MAPS Canada is directly associated to MAPS, so if you send your money to MAPS directly, that's great, but MAPS Canada won't see any of it. So why don't you send your money to MAPS Canada, and then MAPS and MAPS Canada get to see it. So that's that. I think it's very, very exciting time. I'll finish really quickly with one story. When I did Iboga, in that weedy context, a westernized weedy context, it was a guided kind of meditation, soul journeying, they called it. And at one point in this journey, the guide had me go up to a tree in my front yard, and it was this big blossoming cherry tree. And he said, give that tree a hug. So I gave the tree a hug. And he said, ask that tree, what's the purpose of life? So I asked this flowering tree what the purpose of life is, and the tree said, to flower. And we laughed, because it was a great answer. And then there was some kind of a question around negative tendencies, and how do we overcome negative tendencies, things that we don't want in our life anymore. And the tree said, stop watering your weeds. And again, that's great. So working with people who have been addicted to substances for a long time, I thought that's just a great piece of advice for them and for all of us, and I'll leave that with you. I bless and hope that you find whatever those negative tendencies are that are holding you back, and you stop watering your weeds so that you too might have the best opportunity to flower. Thanks very much, everyone.
Another wow. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you for everything you do to help MAPS Canada flourish. Now, our last speaker, since he's looking over there, Gabor Mate, really doesn't need any introductions. Nevertheless, Gabor Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate, was a downtown East Side physician for much of his career, and he became a trauma specialist. And then he started writing books, and he just kept writing books. How many books have you written so far? 4 books so far. They're fabulous. You have to read them. And somewhere along the way, Gabor discovered psychedelics, and he discovered the message that psychedelics can have around the healing process. And Gabor has become a skillful proponent and an articulate spokesperson for psychedelic medicines. Gabor Mate, I would like to welcome you to the podium.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Trevor, that was a great, vital and energetic lead up to my talk. Thank you. And I'm certainly happy to support MAPS because of the great work they do. You've done all the speaking on that, so I don't have to say anything about that. Thank you very much. I began working with psychedelics really towards the end of my medical career, and nothing in my medical career, of course, taught me anything about them. And Joanna talked very eloquently about some of the reasons why psychedelics are an attractive and even necessary addition to our treatment armamentarium. And much of what she said, I can only echo very, very briefly for you, but the system, the medical care system, whether it's to do with chronic physical illness or to do with mental illness, to say that it's broken is an understatement, because it wasn't even together in the first place. There was never a system to be broken, because they had never understood what's really wrong with human beings, and they don't to this day. And really at UBC Medical School, where I went in the 70s, to this day, and this is now 40 odd years later, they still don't teach students anything about trauma, which is extraordinary, because trauma is at the basis of all mental illness, addiction, and most of chronic illness as well. And the average medical student still to this day does not get a single lecture on trauma, despite all the evidence, despite all the research published evidence. So any system that ignores the basis of illness cannot possibly succeed in healing the illness, and as John pointed out, it can often only succeed in re-traumatizing people, which it does. And it does for a number of reasons. One is that it ignores trauma. It just utterly ignores it. Now, let me tell you a story. I was in Norway in, I think it was October, maybe early November, speaking at an international conference on trauma. There were 2 other speakers there, or 2 of the other speakers were both prominent Americans. One of them is a psychiatrist who wrote one of the editions of the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual of the Psychiatric Association on Mental Illness. The other person is a top researcher and practitioner of cognitive behavioral therapy. These are names that many of the people in this room would recognize if I mentioned them. I asked one of them, where do you live? And they said, San Diego. I said, oh, San Diego. That's great. You must know Dr. Vincent Felitti. No, who is he? Well, Vincent, I said, oh, well, he's only the chief investigator of some of the most important studies ever done, the so-called adverse childhood experiences studies, which show the relationship between early childhood adversity, trauma, in other words, whether the kind of overt trauma that Joanna talked about, or the relational developmental trauma, but the relationship with all those early experiences to mental and physical pathology later on. I said, he's the chief investigator of the ACE studies, and these leading psychologists and psychiatrists both looked at me and said, oh, what are those? These studies have only been published in 1,000 journals. psychiatric and psychological and medical journals. So that there's this deep resistance and phobia around dealing with trauma. And now, there are other reasons as well. Just the dogged and consistent and relentless separation of mind and body, of not seeing the relationship between our emotions and our physiology. So yesterday, I was talking to somebody that I know that I've been working with for years. She is in Boston. And this is a woman whom, I'll quote you something from her writing, if I can just find it here. Yeah. She begins her memoirs with this phrase, "I was going to die and I knew it. You know it in a way that lovers know that it's the one, the way lovers know that it's over." And she was literally dying. She's been diagnosed with a condition called scleroderma. Scleroderma is one of these autoimmune diseases where the immune system assaults the body itself. And in the case of scleroderma, it means a hardening. Sclerosis means hardening. Derm means the skin, so hardened skin is what it means. But not just the skin hardens, so that the connective tissue underneath the skin. So when I first talked with this woman whose name was then Mandy, her face was, if you can see my face, though, it tightened, girlish. She could barely speak with her mouth because she could barely move the muscles. She couldn't type because her fingers were too stiff. And her prognosis was that the muscles of respiration would stiffen up as well, and she would literally choke. And now Western medicine has got zero idea of what causes autoimmune disease, and the best they can do with it animated, and she smiles and she laughs. She can type again. She's